Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and welcome back for all of those who are on holiday here in the United States for Memorial Day, and welcome to everybody else listening in from around the world. So it's my pleasure today to be talking about going beyond annual planning and how to adapt AI for your organization, because I think it's so important that we think about, what are the important aspects of AI that's so different. And again, each day that passes, I'm more and more convinced that our world is going to look completely different a few years from now. And again, there's a saying that change feels like it's happening super fast, but it actually happens pretty slowly over the long term. I think in this case, they're going to accelerate because of the nature of AI. And I think one of the things that has to change is also how we think about our planning process, in particular, how we think about strategy. Because strategy is that long term aspect where things are going to change, but we anticipate they're going to change somewhat slowly. I think in reality, things are going to change a lot faster, especially if we are trying to be proactive and adapting AI and adapting our companies and transforming them to what AI can do. So, today I want to talk about how AI is shifting the strategy planning process. What does strategy even look like when in the world of AI? And especially, how do you become more agile? Because for those of us who have done strategic planning, I used to be a strategy consultant back in my days. And that early training really gave me this foundation of thinking about strategy, thinking about the future, and thinking about how do we prepare ourselves today for the future we want to build. So let's get into it. And today, I'd love for you to share. Let me show this. What are your top priorities for your AI strategy? We talk about AI, we talk about how important it is. So, what are you trying to do with your AI strategy? Hopefully, it's to support your business strategy, but we'll go into that and talk about that too as well. So, I do have some slides I'll be sharing here in a bit. And thank you, Jay, for joining from Illinois and also for sharing the link into LinkedIn because I can't post it there for some bizarre reason. All right, let me get into the slides here. And today we're going to be talking about going beyond annual planning. And I will say this until I'm blue in the face that use cases are not a strategy. So if you're like most organizations, you have a long, long list of ways you want to use AI, and that's fantastic. You're figuring it out, you're trying things, experimenting, piloting, but those use cases are not a strategy. And just a reminder of what strategy is, it is a set of integrated choices that position your organization to win in whichever way your organization defines winning. So that could be growing and delivering more profits to your shareholders. It could be delivering some sort of value to your constituents. Whatever your definition of winning is, strategy are the choices you make, and ideally integrated across your entire organization, the choices that you make in order to win, to position yourself to win, deciding where you're going to play and how you're going to win. That's all strategy is. So if your AI is sitting there and you're like, oh, we can get some more efficiency, some more productivity, that's great. How is it positioning you to win? Are there other things that you could be doing, other applications of AI that could give you greater possibilities of winning, of doing well, of succeeding, whichever way you have defined it? And that is the challenge, is that unless we look beyond the very good gains you can get from efficiency and greater productivity from AI, you're not going to win with it. So I think it's so important that we take a look at that. And so one of the things that we do, Katja Welsh and I, in our book, and we're almost done with it. We're getting close to actually shipping it, the final manuscript. It's been a work for the past year or so. And the way that we think about this is that there are three types of AI priorities. At the most foundational level, and it's so important to make sure that you have enterprise-wide exposure to AI. We hear from many organizations that most people are still don't have access to these tools, or if they do, it's a minimal number of people, it's limited use cases. We fully believe that in order to get the best bang for your buck, it is to put in enterprise-wide access to AI with full training, safe, secure, simple ways to use basic levels of AI. We're talking access to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Microsoft Copilot, something to get people's hands on AI. And that is just foundational. I think it's so important to get into the hands of people who can use it, and then they can experiment and try. Then there are these departmental tools. For example, in marketing, some people really love using content generation tools like Jasper to create content. And it understands your brand voice, it understands the way you use certain things. You can upload assets to it. So it has a common denominator on which to build the content. So it's just a great tool to use. Same thing with GitHub and tools that are used by developers and coders. So these tools are fantastic to put in place. They're sort of no-brainers. They lead to efficiency and productivity. They're very specific to each of these departments. Again, fantastic tools to put in place. If they help you, if they give you some efficiencies, you can justify it from an investment point of view, then put them in place. Then there are the strategic applications. And these are the ones I want to focus on today, because these are the ones that are going to significantly move the needle. They're the ones where you use AI that is going to have a big outcome on your ability to perform in the marketplace, to be able to win. And so those things are much bigger, they're more complicated, they go across departmental silos, so they require an enterprise perspective and an effort, because these are big moves. These are the places where you truly are reinventing your organization. So the way I think about it is that it's so important for everyone to be thinking about your AI in these three levels, because if you don't, you start getting them mushed together and you think AI is all about getting access or these departmental tools. It's all those things, but it's very important to look at the strategic applications as well. So let me take a minute, and I see a couple of chats in here. Jay just shares what his AI use is, his AI strategic goals are. For us moving forward, we want to make sure we are compliant with our clients' policies on AI, since we work in a highly regulated space. And for right now, there's very little guidance, so we move bravely forward to stay competitive. So far, it has paid off. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jay, and also for again emphasizing the importance of a safe, responsible, ethical use of AI. So that's fantastic that you're staying very close to that too as well. All right, let me move on and continue with the strategic planning aspects. And so we have identified three ways to create value. Clearly, there is efficiency when you use AI. There's also many different ways to engage with your customers and employees. And then the third area is about reinventing, where you are looking at your existing business. And this is where a lot of the strategic implications come in, and saying, how do we do things differently? Because we have these capabilities now. And one of the things I really want to emphasize here is that all three of these areas can be game changers. It isn't just that reinventing and disrupting your business is a game changer. Of course, that's going to be transformative. But having more efficiency, being more productive can be highly transformative. Engaging with your customers in new and different ways, driving deep personalization can be transformative. So all three of these can be transformative if you take the perspective that it is going to transform your business. All three of them can be highly strategic and impactful, but you need to think about the ways they can be impactful and strategic in that way. So let me go through and just give you an idea. We call this a value portfolio, because your decision to invest in each of these three categories of AI value will change over time. So for example, in Q1, at the beginning of your journey, you may be focusing a lot more of your time and effort and your resources on efficiency, a little bit less on engagement, and a little bit of experimentation on reinvention. But 6 quarters later, you probably will have achieved many of the efficiency gains. And so your initiatives will be focused much more on engagement and reinvention. So there's this shifting and of focus over time. And to think about value, about the impact of AI as a portfolio, we believe, is a really useful way to be thinking about your AI strategy because it will shift over time. And here's the thing with AI, we don't know exactly how it's going to shift. We don't know what new technologies will come on board. And very importantly, we don't really know how quickly our organizations will adapt and will adopt AI and adapt their practices, our culture, the way we work with AI. We could see sometimes that we may be stumbling forward, we may be jerking away forward. It's very uneven, but there was also a point where we see organizations hit this tipping point and they accelerate into their adoption of AI because they suddenly realize and the culture shifts to say, oh, we're going to speed up our adoption of this because it is so valuable to us. So it's a lot of unknowns that you're dealing with. And strategy planning doesn't like unknowns. We typically like to have a plan it out for the year, and then execute on it. And success is determined by how accurately we anticipated each month, each quarter for the year that we anticipated what the goals would be and hitting them every single quarter. That is not the key for success with AI. And then this is the big change, I believe, in mindset when it comes to an AI strategy. We have to write it down. We have to have a plan that we can follow. But the reality is that plan needs to be written down in pencil because at the end of each quarter, you're probably going to have to change it. It also requires that we go beyond the typical year. Most annual planning and budgets and initiatives have a plan. And as you get closer to the end of the plan, your runway gets shorter and shorter. So 9 months in, 6 months in, 3 months in, and then you start the whole process again and plan another 12 months. AI doesn't work that way. If you want to get what you want to have, you need to start planning now for months and quarters, 18 months, 2 years down the line. And so we need to have that longer vision and cycle to be able to plan effectively. So the way you've heard me probably say this before is the 6 quarter walk. It's to go a little bit beyond, go to 18 months, and each quarter define the impact that AI is going to have and helping you win. So in Q1, we're going to deliver this. This is what we believe is going to happen. In Q2, we believe this is the impact that we're going to have on our organization. We'll be able to do these new things. We'll have these new capabilities. We'll be able to do things more efficiently. We're going to be reinventing these parts of our business. And then Q3, Q4, continuing on to Q6. The reason why it's so important is that it's still a mystery of what AI can do. What value are we going to create? How do we think beyond these small efficiencies? And when you can lay out the impact of AI, what it's going to have on your organization over the next 6 quarters, 18 months, it becomes something real and tangible that you are building towards. Because this is the key. Until we can demystify what AI does, until we can understand this is what we are trying to do with AI, this is our strategy, the choices we are making of what we are going to do and what we are not going to do to achieve our business goals, what we are going to do, what we are not going to do to win. And that's a very different question than asking, so what can AI do? Instead, you're asking, how can we use AI to help us do the things we want to accomplish? So I think it's important that we think about how strategy is coming together or not. So I just want to see if there are any questions. Jay has a quick comment here. There are concerns being created with Google and Microsoft creating these walled gardens inside of the, I believe, inside of their models. I think what you're saying. And I think one of the key things about strategy is that you do want it to be more expansive. You want people to understand what the strategy is so that people can execute on that strategy. I didn't put it in here, but I think it's one of the most important aspects of your strategy is that people understand and be able to answer 3 questions. And this is every single person. What is the future we're trying to aim for? So what is that goal out in the future? What is the future we're trying to build together? What is our strategy, the path we're going to take to get there from today to that tomorrow? And what is each person's role and responsibility in making that strategy a success? If you can have every single person on in your employees, oh, let's just say even on your leadership team, who can answer those three questions similarly, then you're off to a great start because that's alignment. That's again focus on what's you're trying to do with AI. So I think in particular when you're looking at something like the 6 quarter walk, this is one of the key advantages of it. Because what happens then is that everyone knows what we're trying to build. And everyone knows that in Q1, we're working on this, not something else. And so everyone is on the same page. And so this is the process for creating and updating that strategy. It's again, making sure your priorities are very clear in terms of what you're trying to do with your strategy. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, though, I'll walk in, I'm like, okay, let's work on your AI strategy. Let's start with your core business strategy. And they're kind of going nervously looking at each other. Well, we don't really have it written down. Or people will say they will have competing agendas and competing objectives. And so we need to just make sure we're all pointing in the same direction. And then you want to think about what are these foundational tools again, and departmental tools and strategic priorities that you want to have, just making sure that we're all on the same page of what we're trying to work on. Sequence all the things that have to happen. So if you want to do something that does a lot of personalization, what are the dependencies that are needed? How do we drive that speed and impact to actually having that come into fruition? What are the pieces that need to be in place? And then we go on to making sure that all those things are aligned with the financial realities of an organization, and then conduct regular reviews, which I'll just go back into in just a second, and then communicate the roadmap to all of your various stakeholders. This is how you do the strategy, and you repeat this again and again each time you update it. Now, I think it's so important to think about this process as something around creating, again, this alignment, this focus of the organization on what's important and not. And what it's very helpful is this quarterly review process because, again, it's not something that you do on an annual basis. I'm really strongly suggesting that strategy needs to happen in a much more agile way, especially on a quarterly basis when it comes to AI. I mean, things change, it feels like every day. So an annual process just makes absolutely no sense. Quarterly is that logical time that a lot of organizations work on. So it's a natural pace and place for people to get gathered together and assess where you are. So there are a couple principles I believe that drive these quarterly reviews. The first one is that it's really focusing on the most important parts. This whole strategy, AI, can be incredibly complex. But my belief is that you cannot make decisions on highly complex things until you can understand the most important things that really drive impact. And so make decisions based on that clarity of what decisions do we need to make. It's not about everything, but what are the most important ones that will drive the most impact for your organization. It also allows for great transparency. And so when everybody is involved, who needs to be involved, everybody understands where we are. It breaks down these silos, makes sure that everyone has a voice and has a say, that they're being heard. And it just reduces all the politicking that goes on. It also allows for these adjustments that can come in. It's so important to understand the new opportunities that are being created with AI. There may be new technologies, it may be new hires that you have, new processes that the department has in place that can impact what your future plans look like that you didn't anticipate a quarter ago. And then again, I will just loop back to that discipline that's so important. Staying focused on those high value initiatives and making sure that you're not being distracted from all the noise that is out there. Again, it is so difficult to stay focused, I believe, on what is the most important thing that you need to make a decision on. So once you have those principles in place, again, everyone's agreed that this is what we need to do, then you can do the actual process for planning, for the reviews. And there are two major phases to the quarterly review process. There's the preparation stage when you're gathering information, and then the actual meeting of the quarterly review. So when you're preparing, you want to track what has actually happened. So continuously track throughout the quarter. Are we where are we on these various applications that we're developing? How well are they being deployed? Are the people changing the way they're working? So just actually tracking progress through the various dashboards. And then it's important to gather feedback from people because AI isn't just about the technology, it's really about how well people feeling about this. Do they feel confident? Do they feel secure? Do they feel safe? What are the things that are not going well? Where do you need more focus? So, gathering that feedback from people who are being impacted by the technologies, by these initiatives, by these strategies, these choices that you have is such an important part of the process. And then finally, get a quick scan of the landscape. What new technologies have appeared? What are your competitors doing? How are customers reacting to and using AI themselves? What are their expectations and how are they changing? So, those are all things that you gather very quickly. You start doing that maybe 2 weeks before at the end of the quarter. And then you have your meeting and you ask people to look at the review of the progress, celebrate, take a moment and say, look at how far we've gone. But it's also the places where we can raise challenges, we can address some of the problems that we're having, identify those gaps where resources are needed, people are needed, more time or budget, and then refine the roadmap. This is where you go to the next quarter, make any adjustments in each of the other 5 quarters, and you add another quarter at the end. This part is very important. And should be more of an adjustment than a wholesale rethinking because your strategic goals are still fixed. You may adjust them a little bit, but they're still very much determined by your overall strategic goals for your business. So your AI strategy is still on track. You're making adjustments, erasing some parts, writing it again down in pencil, and then you're communicating as a last step all of the updates to your various stakeholders who need to know about it. And again, at the end of next quarter, you repeat this process again and again. So this is a way to do agile strategic planning. And so one of the ways that I think it's so important is to think about all the things you can do now, the speed at which you can gather information, understand the competitive landscape, have these things on sort of autopilot to be able to get you that information at the end of each quarter. It is so much easier to do these things. I remember doing competitive analysis as a brand new minted college grad for a strategy consulting firm. It was painful. We didn't even have laptops back then. So just being able to do that type of analysis is super helpful to be able to, again, work at the speed of the changes that's happening in the business landscape. So I think it's very important to think about this whole landscape, think about how your strategy planning process needs to change. And the annual planning process is just completely outdated for AI. You can keep doing that for your overall business to help you set those strategic goals. But when it comes to your AI strategy in particular, having a quarterly review process, or as some organizations have been saying, we're constantly adjusting the strategy and making sure that people understand how that strategy is changing. But have at least a quarterly formal review process to say, this is how our strategy is changing, making sure the roadmap is being adjusted, and very importantly, communicating it to everyone in your organization that needs to know about it. All right, so I'm just looking over here to see what other comments here. Let's see, I'm just reading through. It's a bunch of things happening here. Okay, so Adam has a comment. It to say is that AI strategy is simple, how we can train LLMs on our business and make money with automation. Great. Automation is the focus. So it's interesting that again, one obvious benefit is less headcount. And I think the example that you give is about bagel shops and being able to use automation. So thank you, Adam, for sharing that. And I think that's, again, a lot of organizations, whether they want to admit it or not, are using AI to do a lot of the automation of tasks. Jobs will be more and more automated. And the idea is that we could use less people. I think there are also ways to be thinking about how will you use those people? What is going to happen to them? Will they be doing higher value added jobs? Will they be retrained, or will they have to be outplaced? So a lot of questions and controversies around that right now. And again, I see a lot of organizations kind of tooling around the edges to say, well, we think this could happen, but they're not putting a lot of strategy and thinking into workforce planning, for example, that needs to be part of your AI strategy. What are the implications for your people? What are the ways that when you do automation, how is that going to change your culture? So, all these things need to be taken into account when you're creating your AI strategy. All right, just looking here to see what else is happening here. Jay, again, just thank you for joining. I'm glad you're enjoying this. I don't see any other comments right now, but I'll check again at the very end. I do want to just focus on just for a minute on what I'm going to be talking about next week, because it's one thing to have a strategy, it's another thing to communicate it. And so we'll be talking about how to do this well. There have been a few examples where CEOs like from Shopify and Duolingo have gone onto social media and posted their internal memos to the employees saying, we're going to be AI first, AI ready. We're going to use AI reflexively. And for the most part, people are looking at that and saying, wow, that's great. You're being innovative. You're being on top of things. And even though they say in here, we're still going to keep our people first, there's been some backlash from people who say, well, you're just going to use AI to cut all your people, it sounds like. So it's, again, how do you communicate your strategy, your AI strategy well to all of your stakeholders, not just employees, but also your customers, your partners, the community and society, your shareholders, obviously, your board. Again, there are so many different ways to communicate. And it's so important to think strategically again, because there is so much concern and so much fear around AI. Communicating your AI strategy well is a key part to you leading AI strategy in your organization. So join me next week on June 3rd at 9 a.m., same time and place, to be able to talk about AI, communicating your AI strategy. I'm just going to check and see if there are any other comments. We don't have any right now. So again, thank you for joining today. I would love to hear from you if you are doing agile strategic planning. Always curious to see how it's working in real life. We do have some examples from companies who have been adopting and using this approach and doing it quite well. But I always would love to have more real life examples and hear what's working, what's not. Take care, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.